Locked cell phones are something that consumers have grown to accept when choosing their wireless service. But now that some babies in the House of Representatives can't get an iPhone with Verizon, Congress, suddenly they want some change. Last month, consumers flocked to Apple and AT&T stores when the most anticipated phone in history was finally released. But now politicians are making noise over locked cell phones and whether or not Apple should have been able to sign an exclusive 5-year deal with AT&T. Democrats in Congress state that the commitments and fees that plague mobile phone subscribers are the epitome of what's wrong with the wireless industry today. Michigan Representative Fred Upton claims that up to 40% of those who purchased the $600 device last month shelled out additional money to opt out of their current contracts. However, the federal government has zero power when it comes to freeing cell phones for use on any wireless network. But should the government have the right to intervene, or should cell phone carriers be able to lock you in to the next iPhone? Can you hear me now? It's The Loop. All right, my guest tonight from San Francisco, editor for Wired News, Mark McCluskey, joins us, and from New York, a Forbes.com digital download reporter, David Ewalt is here. Welcome to The Loop, gentlemen. Let's get it going. David, for those who still don't know what exactly it means when we hear that a phone is locked to a specific carrier, what are we saying in general terms?
Well, what we're saying is you generally have to buy your phone from a carrier, or wherever you buy it, you can only use it on Verizon, or you can only use it at AT&T. The kind of analogous thing would be if you bought a computer. You say you went and bought a Dell computer, and Dell told you, all right, when you take this home, the only way you're allowed to get onto the internet is through a Verizon DSL line. And that's really what's happening right now with cell phones.
Now, Mark, is that a fair analysis when you consider that maybe Verizon and Dell they're not taking away 50% to sometimes 90% of the cost of the laptop?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair analysis. This is something that's been going on for ages. It's a little bit funny that Congress has decided to become suddenly outraged because some staffer in upstate Michigan couldn't get their hands on an iPhone because AT&T's coverage sucks there.
Yeah, well, you're referring to last week, the Congressional Telecom Subcommittee. They had this hearing. It turned into an iPhone discussion about how it's locked down to AT&T. And, well, Mark, it sounds like you don't believe that this is going to be the beginning of sweeping change now that Congress is aware, right?
Well, you guys were talking about the BlackBerry 8820, 5 minutes ago. That's locked to AT&T right now, too. They've got an exclusive on it when it comes out, and nobody is, marching around Congress demanding access to their 8820. It's because it's the iPhone. It's because there's such hype around this gadget that people are all up in arms about this.
Well, David, now that they're...
important to...
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, it's an important point. This is not the first phone ever that's been locked. I mean, you go back at all the other popular phones. The Razr was locked when it first came out. They stay locked for a while and locked in a network for a while, and then they come off. And that's the way the system has worked. But,
David, everybody was saying that the iPhone, because it was becoming this iconic device, it had the power to maybe break up the industry or at least shake things up. Is that going to happen at all? Is there a snowball's chance?
Well, I think, sure, yeah, there's a snowball's chance. I mean, this is an important device in a lot of ways. But fact of the matter is, AT&T and Apple have a contract. And short of the feds actually coming in and doing something really radical, which they're probably not going to do, this phone is staying locked for the next couple of years unless you get a hacked version, which is probably the way to go.
Now, Mark, some are saying that, if the federal government gets involved, they could regulate this thing. They could unlock the phones. They could make all the carriers play nice, even though technologically it's damn near impossible. But the cell phone carriers themselves say they do want federal regulation. Shouldn't that freak everybody out? That it sounds like the right thing to do, and it's what the companies want. That feels a little weird to me.
Well, what it does for the carriers is it gives them an easier regulatory playing field. Instead of having to deal with 50 states, you just deal with the federal government. But, is Congress really going to act on this? Well, now that their attention is turned to it, I'm sure there'll be quick and decisive action taken on this issue.
Of course, we can see sweeping change overnight.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's worth remembering that Congress did something similar a couple years ago when they've done other regulations that have forced the cell phone companies to do things like allowing you to trade your number. If you leave Verizon, you can keep your cell phone number when you go to AT&T. They have acted before and made them cooperate and do things they didn't want to do. So.
Well, I think some of the outrage was even just over the early cancellation fees, that if you wanted to leave AT&T, you couldn't. Could we at least see that now Congress is aware that people have to pay a penalty to leave a carrier? Might that go away?
I think that much at least is clear, yeah.
Yeah, one certainly hopes so. David makes a great point, is, Congress definitely has the ability to really change the system. It doesn't have to be this way, and it's horribly anti-consumer, and all of us hate it. So, as much sarcasm as I'm laying on Congress, I would love to see them really get their act together on this issue.
But now, what about those? I'll go to you, David, who say that cell phone exclusivity. It's not a horrible thing against the consumer. It's just a part of capitalism. Hey, you want the phone? You come to our service. You do have choice.
Well, I mean that's really important. Is that look? If I'm making cookies, I don't want the government telling me you have to sell your cookies at all of these different bakeries. If I just want to sell it at one, that's where I'm going to sell my cookies. Now, it's a part of capitalism, and that's the way capitalism works right now. Is this is the system. The other way that capitalism works is the consumers don't have to buy the phone. If people are ticked off that they can only get it on AT&T, well, then you know what? You don't buy it until a couple years from now when it's locked up, when it's unlocked, and you can get it on any network. That's the other half of capitalism, is the power of the consumer.
There's power to the consumer, but part of the problem is, given the sporadic nature of cell phone coverage, especially outside of major metropolitan area, there is much less choice than, there might be 10 bakeries in a small town, but if there's only one carrier that has any signal, you're stuck with them.
And you're paying $175 if you don't finish every damn sprinkle on the cookie. I mean it. All right, let's move on to the final word. Is every carrier going to get a version of the iPhone, or in 5 years or so, are we all just going to be using Apple Wireless? David, I'll start with you.
My understanding of the deal with Apple and AT&T is that the iPhone's going to stay with AT&T for the conceivable future. Eventually, you'll be able to get it on all the different carriers, but that may not be till like 2012.
Sure.
I think people who want to use it on Verizon are, going to have to buy something else or get a cracked version.
Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, anybody who wants to use the iPhone on Verizon is out of luck because it runs on the GSM network and Verizon runs a CDMA network. They don't talk to each other.
I just want Steve Jobs to start gobbling up cell phone antennas. That's all I need. They can have it. iMobile, I'm very happy. But I want to thank my guests, Mark and David. Appreciate you guys joining us and keeping us all in the loop.
Attack of the Show, weeknights at 7, only on G4.